Hello, I'm George from Ireland, so welcome back to my channel. And in this video, I'm going to offer an explication of why Putin's war against Ukraine is a war of aggression, therefore an illegal war. Now, the idea of a war being a war of aggression and something which is justiciable is not new. That goes back to 1268, when King Conrad of Sicily was put on trial for that. But there have been statutes since the 1930s governing this. International law is very complex, and like all areas of law, it's dynamic. It never stands still. So the Russian state likes to underscore the fact that it's the primary successor state of the Soviet Union, and therefore inherits the juridical patrimony of the Soviet Union. So all the treaties signed by the Soviet Union remain applicable in the Russian Federation today. They don't think they've disapplied any of them. Hello, Qasim H. Anyway, so this is what the International Military Tribunal at Nuremberg, in which the Soviet Union played such a prominent part, had this to say about a war of aggression. To initiate a war of aggression, therefore, is not only an international crime, it is the supreme international crime, differing only from the other war crimes in that it contains within itself the accumulated evil of the whole. Close quotation. And Article 39 of the United Nations Charter, which the Soviet Union helped to draw up, said that the UN Security Council can decide whether there's something is a crime of aggression or not, and shall make recommendations to decide what measures should be taken in accordance with Articles 41 and 42. Close quotation. Now, obviously, Russia being a permanent member of the UN Security Council, well, that's not going to happen. But there are other definitions. There's no state of indeterminacy on this one. Of course, there's the Rome Statute in the International Criminal Court, to which Russia isn't signed up. Quite a few other countries aren't signed up. Ukraine, the United States, India and others. Republic of Ireland we are. The UK is as well. So I know Russia could advance the argument that it can't be held to a legal standard to which it never concurred, and that there is some merit in that line of reasoning. But nevertheless, the International Criminal Court claims that it has jurisdiction over states which are actually not signed up to this. But I know that remains a bone of contention. Anyway, so there were, in 1933, conventions for the definition of aggression. Those were signed at London, and the Soviet Union was one of the signatories and indeed ratified the treaty. I mean, all these things I'm going to mention, unless specifically said, Russia or its predecessor signed and ratified the same, and therefore is legally bound by it. So the Kellogg-Briand Pact in 1928, when the foreign ministers of France, the United States, and many other countries, they said that they would not fight or not initiate a war again, nor threaten to do so. And the Soviet Union signed that. Maxim Litvinov was the Soviet foreign minister, and indeed it was deposited in Moscow, a copy of it. And what did it say aggression is? It says proclaiming war upon another sovereign state, invading on the land of another state, even without a declaration of war, attacking by land, sea or air, whether with a declaration of war or not, or attacking its ships on the sea or its aircraft. Any of that is obviously a war of aggression, and Russia's been doing all of these things, blockading its ports, even if you don't actually open fire. That can be war of aggression, and indeed furnishing material support to armed groups in the territory of another state in order to foment or to sustain an insurrection. Anyway, so that obviously Russia's been doing that with Luhansk and Donbass for over 8 years, and indeed it's got its own troops in Luhansk and Donbass, the easternmost regions of Ukraine, despite lying about it and deceiving the world every day, not very successfully. So maybe there's a bit too much sun shining on me. So the Nuremberg International Military Tribunal, it gave a fulsome definition of the crime against peace, and then this was submitted to the General Assembly and signed off by the General Assembly in 1950. And it said, well, what are these crimes against peace? One, the planning, preparation, initiation, or waging of a war of aggression or war in violation of international treaties, agreements and or assurances, and two, participation in a common plan or conspiracy for the accomplishment of any of the acts mentioned under one. Close quotation. So I'll go back over that. So obviously Russia attacked Ukraine, even though one Russian ambassador had the chutzpah to claim that they're not. That when 200,000 troops cross the border, when you kill several thousand Ukrainian civilians, at least several thousand Ukrainian military personnel, when you destroy at least a few thousand civilian buildings, when you deliberately attack at least 64 hospitals and clinics, that's not a war, an attack by land, sea, and air. Wow. I mean, the Russian state really has divorced from reality when they can maintain that with a straight face. I have to seriously question the sanity of anyone who can actually say that in public, who can bring themselves to sell such a flagrant lie. And if they'll lie about that, they will lie about anything. But lying is just second nature to some of Putin's pet politicians, diplomats, bureaucrats, generals, and so forth. I suppose they see just lying as being a weapon of war, one that they're going to use over and over. It's part of the broader war on truth. So they've obviously aggressed Ukraine, but they're doing this over 8 years, just doing it in an even more frank and flagrant fashion. And remember, obviously, they recognized Ukraine as an independent state in 1991. They exchanged ambassadors. There was a Budapest Memorandum in 1994 in which they vowed to respect the territorial integrity and independence of Ukraine, which had been breaking, obviously. The attempted murder of the president of Ukraine, Lukashenko, in 2004 with poison. He was flown to Austria and his life only narrowly saved. So that was another act of outright aggression. It was attempted murder. If they were trying to kill a commander-in-chief who was a president in wartime, well, that would be different. But there was no war going on back then, and it was a time in he was president, I suppose he was commander-in-chief. And also assurances, remember, within hours of the last assurance that there would be no attack, the attack commenced. So you can see how it's in violation of international treaties, agreements, and assurances, and participating in a plan for the accomplishment of the same. Well, that's count two. And of course, Belarus has participated by allowing its land to be used as a staging ground, jumping off point for the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Anyway, so what did the Nuremberg trials say about this? It said the legal basis for the jurisdiction of court was defined by the instrument surrender of Germany, a political authority for Germany, and had been transferred to Allied Control Council, having sovereign power over Germany, could choose to punish violations of international law and the laws of the war. Okay, so close quotation. So obviously Russia hasn't surrendered, but international tribunals, I mean, based on that precedent, they do have the right to punish violations of international law and the laws of war. So this is jus cogens, and erga omnes must obey it. So there is no causa interventionis here. Russia's case for war is on a bogus basis, claiming that there was genocide going on, and that's been found by the International Court of Justice. And Russia really didn't have a leg to stand on, which they didn't send a lawyer or any representative to speak at the International Court of Justice, despite Russia having signed up to the ICJ for about 150 years. And as used in other circumstances, they've been thrown out of the European Council, and therefore, so the European Court of Human Rights. And then former President Medvedev said that this is a golden opportunity to restore the death penalty. And is yet another sign that the modern Russian state views itself very much in the Stalinist tradition. Its adjuncts in Luhansk and Donbass for the past few years, they repromulgated a Stalinist decree allowing for trial before a panel of 3 intelligence officers, not judges, no legal representation for the defendant, and the panel is empowered to impose the sentence of death, and this will be executed within hours of it being announced, and there's no right of appeal. And they have indeed executed people by firing squad on that ground, obviously violating all the rules of a fair trial, again, which Russia signed up to under the United Nations Charter and various other international legal instruments. So we know that the UN, under Article 1 of its charter, is there to maintain international peace and security, to take effective and collective measures for the prevention and removal of threats of peace, for the suppression of acts of aggression and other breaches of peace, to bring about by peaceful means and in conformity with the principles of justice, international law, the adjustment or settlement of international disputes. And a close quotation. So the UN is the forum to go to if you have some dispute. You might not get your way, you have to live with it. And then another point from Article 1 of the UN Charter, to develop friendly relations among nations based on the respect for the principle of equal rights and self-determination of peoples, and to take other appropriate measures to strengthen universal peace. Close quotation. So the UN is there to promote these friendly relations between nation states, it says, to promote equal rights. As in, Ukraine is equal to Russia in that regard, self-determination. The Ukrainians have decided to be independent, to be separate from Russia. They're allowed to do that, to determine their own future, to join the European Union if they so wish, to accede to NATO if they so wish, and they do. And Russia's obviously trying to deprive Ukraine of its sovereign rights. And the bogus allegation of genocide advanced by Moscow is in itself a breach of the International Convention Against Genocide. This is not a term to be bandied about lightly. You mustn't false accuse people of that. There's no causa interventionis, as I propounded. Okay, and the UN Security Council is meant to try and deal with these situations. Anyway, so there was an International Law Commission which gave us a further definition of aggression. And it said, aggression is the use of force by a state or government against another state or government in any manner, whatever weapons used, and whether openly or otherwise, for any reason or any purpose other than individual collective self-defense, or in pursuance of a decision or recommendation by a competent organ of the United Nations, close quotation. So as I pointed out, Russia's been attacking Ukraine for over 8 years, and about 14,000 people have been killed before this latest conflict erupted on the 24th of February